Ann Arbor Inclusive is produced in part with the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues and CTN. The views and opinions expressed in the show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Commission or CTN. For more information about the Commission on Disability Issues, visit a2gov.org/disability resources. If you have program topic suggestions, please email a2disabilityissues@gmail.com.
Hi, I'm Tom Holtland, the host of Ann Arbor Inclusive, a program of the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues. I'm really excited for today's show because I get to interview and talk with two of my friends, colleagues, co-workers, and advocates. We all have something in common. We all have visible disabilities. But today, we're going to be talking about inclusion and exclusion for that matter. The name of our program is Ann Arbor Inclusive, and so it makes sense that this is a perfect topic for our show and for our communities. Mark and Izzie are, again, staff members at the Ann Arbor Center for Independent Living. We all work together, especially on advocacy and inclusion. So it is my pleasure to introduce Mark Hymes and Izzie Bullock with the CIL. Mark and Izzie, welcome. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. How's it going, Tom?
If you could just tell us really quickly your title and just a couple remarks on what you do before we get started.
Yes,
Izzie?
I'll go. So I am an employment and independent living specialist. So what that means is I help people with disabilities gain and I help them develop the skills needed to become employed and maintain employment.
Okay, thanks. And Mark?
Yes, hi. I'm the program coordinator, mostly for Livingston County, but since COVID, we've been doing a lot of collaborative activities through all of our offices of Washington, Livingston, and Monroe. So just planning those and helping expand the CIL efforts in other areas.
Okay. That's great. And I think hopefully we'll hear about some of those before we're done today. Some of those activities.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So we already said that the show is going to be based on inclusion of people with disabilities. And that's something else that Mark and Izzie and myself have in common. We all experience this exclusion on a regular basis. And it's too bad because it's preventable and doesn't have to happen. So we're hoping that this show will open up some eyes and shed a light on one of the barriers that people with disabilities have, and keeping in mind that there are also people with invisible disabilities. And we want to keep everyone with a disability in mind. There are almost 50 million Americans that have a disability. We're one of the largest minorities in this country. So we're talking about a lot of people. But let's start by asking you folks what inclusion means to you. If you could give us your personal and a professional definition of that, either one of you can take that.
So yeah, inclusion, at least to myself, and I think more of a broader explanation is anyone that can go anywhere and do anything with proper accommodations. I think that's like general, or I mean, or without accommodations too, because sometimes there are things we can do that we need help with, and other things we may not need it. Hopefully access to the community is great. Izzie, you wanna?
Yeah, so we've often heard of the saying, inclusion is everyone has a seat at the table. But I would like to go a step further, because people can sit at the table, but that doesn't mean that their voice is heard or that they feel like they can speak up. So inclusion to me is everybody has a voice at the table, not just a seat, and that their voice is taken into consideration and then shown that they matter.
That makes a lot of sense. What are some of the barriers that people with disabilities face in relation to inclusion or exclusion?
So a lot of time is when we talk about inclusion and diversity and equity, it's often that people with disabilities are the minority that is left out of that conversation. We often talk about many other minorities, which they do need to be spotlighted, but many times people with disabilities are not often put into the initiative to be more inclusive and also give them equity and to participating in activities in everyday life.
Could you expand on that by saying what you mean that we want people with disabilities in those diversity and inclusion conversations? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so a lot we are often seeing right now a lot of companies and corporations are pushing for hiring and promoting diversity and inclusion in their hiring practices, which but we're not seeing people with disabilities included in that conversation, or we're not seeing regular council talks of how that include people with disabilities to talk about how they can be included in activities and how society can better become more accessible and inclusive to people with disabilities and their diverse needs.
Mark, can you tell us maybe a personal experience either that you faced as it relates to inclusion, or somebody you've worked with, or a very good example of being out in the community and or even at work and talking about a personal experience with inclusion
Yeah,
or lack thereof?
of course. I mean, there's many a times where I find myself, and this is before I had my guide dog, walking down sort of the wrong way of like let's say an airport, right? So walking down one way, which is sort of the wrong direction with like my cane, just navigating down. People are like, where where are you going? What's going on? Like, what's happening there? So that's another sort of something that like people weren't necessarily as helpful that way. But then when I walk down there with my dog, they seem more willing to help out, which is kind of interesting because one, maybe they think that I'm helping train the animal or something else, but I really honestly haven't had many sort of exclusionary experiences. I guess maybe more so the ones where there's something visual that's happening that I get left out of, and um, or because I can't see it, it's really not explained very well to me. Um, I think more so the importance here with the barriers to the to inclusion and to being included in this talk is that disability spreads beyond all of the intersections uh, and all of the margins. No matter what race, age, uh, sex, or sexual orientation you are, you can have disability too. So it needs to be included because it is so prominent along all of those lines.
Izzy, have you had a personal experience you'd like to share?
Um, yeah, I can think of just even general daily things. When you go into a store that has no automatic buttons, you're automatically excluding me many times, or requiring you to bring someone that I may not need if it was automatic or there was a button. That's just a daily thing. Or just thinking about in social settings, often when friends or peers have events at their house, I'm automatically excluded because individual residents are not required to be accessible.
Right. Yeah. I think when you are in the community and you reach a store, or you go to a game, or you go to something at a school or church and there's a barrier, it makes you feel like you've been forgotten
Yes.
and that you haven't been included in the conversation, which is like you saying someone with a seat at the table. And often it's that what would really have been helpful is asking someone with a disability to sit on your committee of your, renovation project or your building project, or any kind of um, any kind of building or program that involves everyone or should involve everyone.
And also with that being said, not only having one type of disability at the table when it comes to construction, but having multiple disabilities covered at that table. My disability is very different from Mark's, and so I wouldn't be able to speak for him, and what his needs and things were. So including multiple disabilities at the table when
Yeah,
doing construction.
yeah. And I think often we hear that people with disabilities, I know my personal experience is that sometimes we feel invisible. And what we mean by that is that we're overlooked, literally
Um,
looking over our heads, maybe even joining in on a peer conversation of a bunch of able-bodied people standing up in a circle talking. It's hard for us to even penetrate that, first of all, that physical gathering, but second of all, that conversation. You might not ever get asked, hey, what do you think? And that might just be a social conversation. So I think that we also need to include that not only is it really too bad for folks, but it's also hurtful when you think that you've been ignored and not thought of. So I think I'd like to. That's a lot of work that we do at the CIL, combating exclusion and creating more inclusion for people with disabilities. So, but right now everything has changed with the pandemic. Can you tell me how the CIL is carrying out their mission, working with the disability community during the pandemic? Either one of you?
So yeah, the CIL, we've been helping people out virtually, of course, since everybody's basically working from home at this point in time. We can be, reached by phone, video call, and of course email. And these have all been, all of our people are doing great service and great work and helping our consumers out in whichever way they need. Of course, times have changed, and there's a lot of different needs out there right now.
Izzy?
Yeah, I think I've spent many days on Zoom back to back, helping consumers and having meetings and still doing our regular sessions and doing trainings and presentations all over Zoom.
And how are your consumers, the folks that you're working with in the community, how are they adapting to, asking them, hey, do you have a computer? Do you Zoom? Do you know how? What are you finding? Are there barriers to communicating with the people that we work with every day?
Yeah, I think that in either way that there would be barriers. So I think that there's barriers to access to internet, and then and that can be a struggle for people and devices. But I also think I have reached also more consumers now than I have when we were in person, because transportation is a large barrier for people with displays. So now we're kind of removing one of those barriers of transportation, where you can meet virtually and stay in your home, but then you also have the double sword of needing access to internet and devices.
Right. Yeah. Mark, have you seen any sort of barriers with the people you're working with?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm seeing there's quite a few sort of technology barriers, sort of like you mentioned a little bit ago, to where, especially in the more rural areas that we serve, Western and Southern Washtenaw County, Monroe County, and some Livingston areas too. It's getting that technology to the people, or at least finding alternative ways that will help them connect to our great new virtual trainings and activities that we are doing, and also to broader things like telehealth and um, other other important information that comes across.
Okay. So you obviously you're working virtually, but what about some cool social events that you guys have put together and they're going really well? Can you tell us about those events? Some of them?
Yeah, for sure. One thing we started last year, actually around this time, is the virtual movie club, and that's been super popular. We've had folks go on Netflix and watch their movie ahead of time, and then we'd have a discussion every Friday, and it's been uh, really awesome. We've had all different types of movies, from like Ralph Breaks the Internet to even like Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's been
That's
very,
cool.
very exciting.
What else?
We also have Trivia Tuesdays, just a time to get together and do some trivia on Tuesday. Virtual art studio, which is if you have a creative side, that's a wonderful way to get started there. Um, this one, my favorite, and of course also that I'm running as well, is called the Be Active at Home fitness program. It's our partnership with the Spirit Club, and we have programs on Wednesday and Fridays, and um, also the Disability Community Action Lab, which is our advocacy group where people can learn about how to become better advocates in their community and help or help create change. We also have the disability awareness trainings, which um, help with training other organizations, and then also too we have programs for uh, the school-aged students as well that they can as well learn about other disabilities and experience those too. And if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter and learn more too, you can always go to AnnArborCIL.org.
I know that you guys brought a video that's been put together by some staff members, and it's basically on our topic inclusion. Let's take a look at that now, and we'll talk on the other side.
Inclusion means that not only does everyone have a seat at the table, but everyone's voice is heard.
Having all voices present and then using those voices and experiences to enact change.
Inclusion means being thought of as a worthwhile, valued member of society.
Inclusion is everything to a person with a disability.
People with disabilities face obstacles to inclusion in transportation, housing, education.
The biggest issue that the disability community seems to be facing is a lack of access.
A lot of careers aren't necessarily geared toward our skill sets.
Social isolation. That's a big problem with people with disabilities.
Isolation from resources and isolation from their own family members.
The Ann Arbor Center for Independent Living is a disability rights and advocacy organization.
Independence is really not a one-size-fits-all model, and it looks different to everybody.
The Center for Independent Living is all about advocating for people with disabilities.
Helping people with disabilities live their best life the way that they choose.
An outlet for guidance and support.
The CIL stands for inclusion.
My dream for inclusion is for anybody with disability to be accepted in the community for who they are.
To have a deeper dialogue and more far-reaching understanding of what it means to have and live with a disability.
That no one will be denied the ability to direct their own life.
That the engagement of people with disabilities is never a second thought or an afterthought.
What we need from our community is action and to make sure that everybody has equal access to opportunities.
Assurance that we are valued. We need people around us to let us know that we are appreciated.
We need your help.
I think that video says a lot, and it's a well put together of very personal reflections on what inclusion means to these folks individually, you guys, and the disability community as a whole. How can someone viewing become an ally in their community to make it a more inclusive place to be? Izzie?
Yeah, so I like to say this little saying, be willing to listen, learn, and then ask. And so the lesson is be willing to listen to what someone needs without judgment, and then be willing to learn about what they need and what's required of them or what they don't need. And then ask, how can I help you? Often times people jump in and just help without asking. So I think the biggest thing is to always ask.
Yeah, yeah. And let's see. I know we want to talk about a couple events before we finish up. So, Mark, do you want to talk about the Decal Film Festival?
Yes, of course. The Decal Film Festival is going to be a 3-day event starting on April 19th to the 21st, where we'll have various showings of different films, and then a couple workshops and a panel discussion on sort of those videos that we've seen in disability and film. It's been a very exciting time trying to create this. It's our first real big virtual sort of longer event, and the DECAL stands for Disability Community Action Lab, and it's our advocacy group in at the CIO.
Sounds like it's very participatory for folks that sign up for it. And how can people do that?
Oh yeah, of course. They'll have plenty of discussion and learning experiences, and of course, in the workshop, they'll be able to create their own advocacy statement. They can get involved with that. They can actually email me, or they can email Elliot, and I'll give out their email. It's ecarter@aacil.org, and to register, they'll send you the link. So just write in the subject line Decal Film Festival. Again, April 19th to the 21st.
That's great, Mark. I also know that the center's involved with the Big House 5K.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that? I know that's coming up.
Oh, of course, that is definitely coming up. We are one of the beneficiaries for the Big House 5K this year. Oh, the CIL is one of the beneficiaries for that. And it's very exciting because we actually have we're getting some of our staff members together to form a team for that to run or roll or walk in the 5K. And if you'd like to support that as well, you can always email info@aacil.org to for support, or go to aacil.org to learn more about it as well. It should be front on that first page there.
So, Mark, how can people be involved at this point?
Yes, of course, Tom. Unfortunately, the registration date has closed to participate in the run, walk, or roll, but you can always go to our website at annarborcil.org to support and donate to support our runners and our cause. So very excited about that.
Great. So you can make a contribution even if you're not participating and registered for the event.
Yes.
Okay. And what's that date?
Yeah, so the date of the Big House 5K is, of course, it's virtual, so it's going to be between April 16th and 18th.
Okay. So this has all been a great discussion, and I hope it continues by people getting involved and going to our website and checking out all of these events that we're doing and finding a way that they can get involved. I know it's difficult to volunteer right now or to stop by the CIL because it's closed for public traffic, but there is our website, and there's always these events going on, and we're answering the phone and answering questions and sort of triaging folks' inquiries out to the staff members that are working virtually. So I think that inclusion is something that has improved over the years, especially with the Americans with Disabilities Act. But we know personally, at least the three of us know, that there's a long ways to go. And there's so much more that people can do in our community to include folks with disabilities. And so it's my wish that the discussion will continue. So thank you so much, Mark and Izzie, for joining us today on Ann Arbor Inclusive. As I said, our show is a part of the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues, and we are very grateful to our viewers, and we hope that we'll see you next month on Ann Arbor Inclusive. Thanks so much.